Okay, it looks like we are live. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. We are so grateful to have you here today. I popped this in the chat, but I'm curious where everyone is joining us from. During the last live that we had with Nicole Quinn, we had people here from London and Paris and all over the United States. So very curious to see who we have with us in the room today. And I'm going to be introducing our wonderful guest in just a moment. But before I do that, I'm Avery Bradford. I'm head of programming and events for Female Founder Collective and the 10th House. I am going to be kicking off today's discussion, and then our CEO, Allison Wyatt, will be coming in to carry on the rest of the conversation. But before she joins us, I have a couple of announcements, and I'm also going to introduce today's guest, who we're very honored to have here today. But just a quick announcement is today we are opening up the 10th House Beauty and Personal Care cohort. I think I'm actually telling you before applications officially open up. I don't think they open up for another hour. So if you're heading to our website and you're like, where's the application? I may be telling you before I was supposed to. So just note that. But this is open for anyone who's in oral care, hair care, makeup, skincare, fragrances, body care, toiletries, all of the wonderful things that we need to take care of our bodies and beauty. Speaking of beauty, Neh-Kay-Oh is joining us, and she's actually kicking off our Best of Beauty month. So for the next 4 weeks, we are bringing in the best of the best, people who have really changed the game within the beauty industry, which Nyakio has been doing for many years now. And I'm going to read her bio because there's so much here, and there's a lot that even I was blown away by when Allie and I were doing research on you. So Nyakio Grieco is a trailblazing beauty industry veteran and co-founder of 13 Lune, an inclusive beauty retail platform dedicated to promoting minority-owned brands. Launched in 2020, 13 Lune has grown from 13 brands to representing 175, with 90% of its products sourced from minority founders. That's huge. Her first beauty brand, Nyakio Beauty, drew inspiration from her Kenyan heritage and grandmother's natural remedies. Available at retailers like Fred Segal and Jeffrey, New York, Nyakio Beauty was later acquired by Unilever in 2017. Now it is through 13 Lune that Nyakio has truly aligned her passion with her purpose. The platform's partnership with major retailers such as JC Penney and American Airlines have brought unprecedented visibility to the minority-owned beauty brands, further cementing Nyakio's commitment to inclusive representation and empowerment in the beauty space. And this commitment went a step further when she launched relevant and ultra-inclusive line that prioritizes innovation and tech-led formulations. Nyakio, it is incredible what you have been able to accomplish in your sort of short amount of time on Earth. I'm blown away. Like I said, when Allie and I were doing research, every piece of information I learned, I was like, wow, how does this woman do it all? Speaking of women who do it all, I'm going to welcome to the stage Allison Wyatt, who is going to kick off today's interview with Nyakio. Welcome, Allie.
Thanks. And thanks for waiting, everyone. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And thank you so much for having me. And I love kicking off this beauty month. This is wonderful. So thank you so much.
Super exciting. It's an industry that we feel like there's a lot of change happening and there's a lot of opportunity for change. So we couldn't be more thrilled about this particular cohort and diving in with you, because you have such an amazing story and you've done so much in your career, as Avery was just saying. So I wanted to kick off. At this point, you're a serial entrepreneur, obviously. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. How did that initial journey start with your first brand, Neh-Kay-Oh, and then morphing into 13 Lune?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do for Female Founder Collective and this community that you've created that has really given us the space to not only support one another, but to grow and to challenge ourselves. And so I'm just so honored to be a part of it. And, you know, I definitely didn't know my whole life that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but my entrepreneur journey, beauty journey, started very early on in my life. When I was 8 years old, I went to Kenya for the first time. I'm a first generation American of Kenyan descent and went to Kenya for the first time to visit my family. And my grandmother, Neh-Kay-Oh, who I named my first brand after, not myself, was a Kenyan coffee farmer. And my grandfather, who passed away before I got the chance to know him, was a medicine man. And on that trip, and spending time with my grandmother, she taught me how to sort of take coffee beans that grow on her farm and add oils from her kitchen hut and use rods of sugarcane to exfoliate our skin. And I saw it as just magical and such a way to connect with her and with my heritage. And, growing up in the States, my mom definitely was very focused on, kind of continuing those traditions and
Yeah.
helping us to treat our skin and our hair and our nails with things that come from the earth, natural remedies. And so that was always part of my DNA, but it was only after graduating college, moving to LA, working in the entertainment industry, working mostly with actresses, which was the part of the industry that I loved the most, had many beauty products coming across my desk, but never really saw anybody talking about Africa while, across the entire industry, we were using African ingredients like shea butter and marula and mongango nut. And so it was really at that time that I decided I wanted to pivot,
Yeah.
and I loved beauty and I wanted to recreate my grandparents' remedies and skincare. And so I left my job at the age of 27 and decided I wanted to create Neh-Kay-Oh Beauty to celebrate the
Wow.
sophistication.
27. I don't think I even realized that was how young you were.
Baby. Yes, so
Yeah.
young. So young. And so excited to do something that I hadn't seen before. There were, a lot of sort of mass brands talking about African ingredients, but entering premium skincare at that time. And it was a great time for indie beauty. This was a beautiful moment in time where we were starting to see the consumer gravitate towards, independent boutiques and beautiful brands like the original Stila and Hard Candy and DL & Co. and all of these amazing brands out of the early 2000s were hitting the scene. And so it felt like the right time to join the party.
I love that. And then what brought you to, well, actually, I want to speak a little bit more about Neh-Kay-Oh first, because
Mhm.
you actually sold that to Unilever,
Mhm.
which, for many beauty founders, that's the dream, right? Is to have a big exit. But can you walk us through this process? Because I know that it was very transformative for you as a founder.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And did you start the company expecting to sell it, or was that something that happened along the way?
When I started as an independent beauty founder, and I mean very independent, out of my apartment, I was the only person that worked there. I was shipping, receiving, customer service, all of the things. I knew as I attempted to scale this independent business that access to capital was going to be the most challenging for me. And so, yes, I did create the company hoping to scale and grow and knowing that an exit would potentially help me to take the company global, and would be not only the financial support that I needed, but the strategic support I needed to create a global beauty brand, because that was
Yeah.
always the goal. I had many stops and starts with that business. From day one, I was able to raise, and I say this with great respect when I say friends and family capital, meaning that I think a lot of times founders and financiers throw around, the term angel round or friends and family capital as if it's so easy to come by. I was not raised I was not independently wealthy. I wasn't
Yeah.
able to just, draw from my own savings account to start my business and bootstrap. So it was really through introductions and the network and community of people that I had gotten to know throughout my entire life helped me get my start. I did not get a lot of returned emails at that time from private equity or VC, and literally had no idea what the stats were around receiving institutional capital for women and people of color back in 2002. I can't even imagine what the stats were. So, I did whatever I could to make sure that I had what I needed from a resource perspective to get the brand to market. And then I did. And then, at times the business would get to here, but I only had the capital to get to here. And so I would have to pull back on the business and spend a lot of time trying to raise and come back and relaunch. And so for me, an exit was always the goal, because the starting
Yeah.
and stopping is hard for any entrepreneur, but especially as a woman and a woman of color. The sort of setbacks of having to reassess and restart and reassess and restart were deeply challenging. And I knew that the story we were telling, the products that I was making, could really make a significant difference in the industry. And so, by the time I had gotten to a place exit, I had been a part of large portfolio companies. I had been there for a while, bought my name back, went to another portfolio, and the portfolio that I was with at the time of my acquisition, all 5 brands under that umbrella were acquired by Unilever at the same time. And so the process for me was, sort of being in the right place at the right time in order to elevate the brand at that moment.
My ice machine is like singing in the background, so excuse me if
Might that be? I was like, is that a child? Is that an animal?
It's very bizarre. But I'm going to be muting myself on and off so that you all don't have to experience it. But one question I do have around that is like, are there any big learnings that you then took into 13 Lune, or things that were just pivotal in that experience in terms of how you thought you would construct the next business and do it differently?
Absolutely. I mean, there were so many key learnings. I'd say the most important personal learning experience I had in that process was really being sort of non-negotiable about my self-worth and understanding how important it is when you go into any sort of deal making, but especially an acquisition, to maintain to the best of your ability the autonomy to make decisions for yourself. That being said, understanding the opportunity, especially as a woman and a woman of color that was creating products based on global beauty ingredients that anybody could use, how important my stepping into that role and that opportunity would be for the industry as a whole. And it was really being in that position in 2020, working with the brand at Unilever and having opportunities to launch into Ulta and then Target, and then doing all of this in the midst of a global pandemic and the biggest, racial reckoning of our lifetime, that I realized when those listicles were circulating with, the top Black owned or Black founded businesses to shop and follow, and that I was consistently showing up on this list, that this was so much bigger for me in my career than having a single beauty brand. And that everything that I had experienced, had the great privilege of learning and being challenged and having wins that kept me going, brought me to this moment of, wow, had I not experienced this, had I not gotten into these 4 walls of Unilever, I wouldn't fully understand how important it is to create a space where others can get to success much quicker, and that we can help an underserved consumer and an underserved founder have a safe space to celebrate their beauty, their universal connection, their businesses, as well as level the playing field, because obviously Black and brown people don't just make products for ourselves.
It's getting louder. So I'm trying to mitigate that. So I'm going to try to unplug it in just a second, but I want to ask you another question first, because you have a partner in your new business with 13 Lune. So what I would love to know is, how did you make that decision? How did you two come together? And what was some of because you guys work together really well, and I think are super complementary. So I'm just wondering what, thank the Lord. Well, this will be one to remember.
Like, is your freezer running away?
I mean, I was like, it might explode, and that'll be really interesting for this live. But thank God it's you, by the way. Oh my God. And apologies that it's you. But no, I want everybody to hear about your relationship with Patrick, because I do think that it was a really considered and deliberate one. And you all work really well as partners. So would love to hear more about how you thought about, when you were creating 13 Lune, who's the right business operator or partner for me, and how that relationship came together.
Yes. I mean, I think any entrepreneur, especially those of us that start not having co-founders, know that, quite often the entrepreneurial journey can be very lonely. And it was really a priority for me going into whatever I was going to do next. I always knew that Neh-Kay-Oh wasn't the first and last stop, that I could align with partners who could teach me, who I could
Yeah.
teach, who aligned in our mission and how we wanted to show up in the world. And so I had met Patrick years before we created 13 Lune. We became friends through mutual friends, and I loved what he was building at his previous company, 11 on Array. You know, he sort of broke the mold on bringing high end and couture design to an inclusive sizing platform. And I just thought that was so incredible and loved watching him in that journey. And so we had talked about doing something together. Actually, one of our best friends, my best friend from Oklahoma that lives here in LA, had said, you two have to do something together. You speak the same language. And I think that that's really, really important when you think about partnering with someone in business.
Yeah.
And because it's like a marriage. He's my brother, he's my work husband, he's my thought partner. And so when, after the murder of George Floyd and so many others, when we were still in conversations about what we want to do next, we both sort of had this aha moment. It was, for me personally, it was, those listicles and discovering all of these brands that I had never heard of. Being in premium skincare with Neh-Kay-Oh for so long, I was often the only woman of color at shelf. And then all of a sudden I'm on a list of 100 or 500 or 1,000 beautiful brands with rich founder stories, clean brands, efficacious brands. And so my aha moment came in, wow, there is community. And as a founder, I feel so much more connected to these brands. But what's going to happen to these brands? Because if I've never heard of them, then who has heard of them, right? And then for Patrick, because he had had this experience having a platform that was, really speaking to an underserved audience, his aha moment was, I love beauty. We should do something in beauty. And we really could, as people who have done this before, be real catalysts in helping to move the change for inclusion and diversity. And so I think the most important thing is that from day one, this is a business. We weren't starting a charity together. We were starting a business together. But Patrick always says, and I fully agree, that you can do the right thing in the world and still build a highly profitable business at the same time. And so that synergy really was the magic that makes me so grateful to have a co-founder, because you're there together in the best of times, you're there together in the most challenging of times, you challenge each other, you champion each other, and at the end of the day, we're both there to champion the same outcome.
Love that. Beautiful. And you can tell, by the way, from the outside. The other question I had is, you've had very quick growth with 13 Lune, right? You started off with a digital storefront, and then you actually added storefronts in LA, just one storefront, right?
Yes,
in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the rapid growth and how you were able to achieve that, and why specifically you wanted a storefront in Los Angeles?
Yes. So, we created the platform in December of 2020. So we were a company born on Zoom, but we went into it always knowing that we would be fully omni-channel. Neither Patrick or I believed that retail was dead. We knew the minute that we were able to re-enter the world after the lockdown of the pandemic, that people were going to rush to places of community and want to be together. And beauty is such a personal experience. So that was always on the horizon. We did a small pre-seed friends and family round to get the platform up in December of 2020, but 60 days after we launched is when we received the call from JC Penney asking us to to explore becoming their new inclusive beauty retail partner within their stores in their JC Penney beauty space. And so we immediately had to kick off another raise to then ultimately roll out 608 13 Lune stores within JC Penney. And because that partnership came along so quickly, it allowed us to obviously have enormous growth, but it also helped us to bring brands who may not otherwise have ever seen national retail in a way that was in a nurtured environment, knowing that I am them and they are me, and I understand what it takes to win at shelf in national retail, and to do it with a partner that was dedicated to hyper inclusivity. And so we kicked that off, but because that partnership came along so quickly, we knew as 13 Lune as a brand and with Relevant, my second founded brand, which is our in-house incubated brand, that we also too, going back to what I said earlier, needed to have autonomy and we needed to be able to have the space to grow our brands on our own. And so that is why we opened our flagship store here on Larchmont Boulevard in Los Angeles, which I think I'm the one that coined, is become Beauty Row. You know, our allies and neighbors include Credo and Aesop and Skin Laundry and Blue Mercury, and we're all on one block. But it's just so amazing because it's become a true beauty destination here in Los Angeles. And I would say that our space specifically is really a space of community. We have celebrity brow artist Damone Roberts eyebrow salon in our store.
Can you speak a little bit of to the things you do in the store? Because I do think that that's unique and you guys make it really special.
Thank you.
As part of the experience. And I, for one, dropped an obscene amount of money.
When I came, please do. Yes,
came in one of your events. I was like, ooh.
Yes, no, it's so much fun. I mean, we really, you know, I think I was really inspired by, you know, my early days of my first brand launching into Fred Siegel and how Fred Siegel, and for, you know, those of us that were around in the 90s in LA and 2000s, you know, really became this destination where it wasn't just a place to pop in and buy a product or buy an outfit. It was this store in store concept where you wanted to hang out all day long. There were, you know, events every single weekend. There were parties in the evenings. There were, you know, community spiritual events, etc. A restaurant. You know, it really was this amazing destination in Los Angeles that was beloved. And so in creating our space, and we worked with Bridget Romanak to design the space, and, you know, we wanted to be able to sort of bring that element of discovery, you know, through our platform, which is highly editorial. You know, we are the destination for discovery of global beauty brands. But to bring that to life in a real life space has allowed us to do things, everything from events, you know, for the brands. We do have a store in store concept where we have brands like Pattern and Citizen, and Damone, as I mentioned, has his salon in our store. We have rotating pop-ups. We had the John Legend Winter Wonderland for Loved One. We also have, you know, 90% of our brands are created by BIPOC founders from around the globe celebrating global beauty, but 10% of our brands are dedicated to fostering allyship. And so our allies play a really big part in, you know, sort of bringing the eyeballs to the other brands to be discovered. And we sort of all work in tandem to celebrate the beauty of inclusion. We've had sound baths and dance parties, and we launched book events, and yeah, it's so much fun. So if you're in LA or you make it to LA, definitely come see us.
The other thing, Neh-Kay-Oh, is something I noticed when I was there is that the salespeople on the floor were just phenomenal. Like they were so knowledgeable and so helpful. That's part of the reason why I spend so much money, is because like I was looking for answers, right? Of like, what do you do for this skin concern, or you know, for a better brow, or whatever it was that I was sort of looking for. They had solutions, and it was so welcoming. So I'm curious whether it's the in-store staff to your employees and team structure. Can you talk about, especially with such quick growth, how you guys have thought about the team structure in order to support scaling in the way that you've scaled?
Yes. You know, I think one thing, you know, we've been really, really lucky to attract and curate amazing mission aligned people at 13 Lune. Everybody from finance to creative to, you know, our store employees, contractors, et cetera. And so I think having that shared vision and passion across the entire 13 Lune family has been super helpful. What we're finding in this next phase of growth, as we're going from a startup to a fast-growing small business, is that because we have, you know, these different pillars of the business, we have the retail platform that is 13 Lune, where we are celebrating diverse global beauty, right? And then we also have our in-house incubated brand, my second founded brand, Relevant. And so when it comes to actual staffing at this point, as we continue to grow, what we're finding is we need dedicated team members for each pillar of the business. And so, you know, and that's sort of where you kind of see the divide and conquer between Patrick and I as co-founders. You know, I work as on obviously the innovation arm. I work with marketing, helping to curate brands. And then we have finance and looking at those opportunities, like our big licensing opportunities, our JC Penney partnerships, our American partnerships. And that's really where, Patrick and I work together, but, that's where our independent focus is. And I think sort of the magic, speaking to your earlier point of our in-store experience, is that not only, for our multi-brands and all the beautiful brands that we curate, part of the hiring process for the store was really understanding and attracting people who understood inclusive skincare and now inclusive makeup, because that's what we have within Relevant. And so being able to and having a joy and a love for fragrance and wanting to be on that journey. So education is a big part of it. And having talent that understands the multifaceted angles of beauty, but also having team that understands the real opportunity for 13 Lune to be a global brand, to look at licensing opportunities. And as we continue to grow and proceed, it'll be interesting to see if it all stays under one umbrella, or, what alternatives there are for growth and for ultimate exits for the business.
Are there any specific interview questions you've used or interview processes in order to ensure that somebody is super educated or passionate or able?
Yeah.
To
Yes.
do
I
some
mean,
tasks?
as quite the beauty girly, when I'm interviewing anybody on this sort of creative marketing innovation team, I always want to know what their desert island must-haves are and why.
Yeah.
I love to hear about what their, storytelling is at the heart of everything we do. So poor people that I have to interview, that I make tell stories about their lives and their journey to beauty and why, they're passionate about beauty, I think really speaks volumes of, obviously I'm not, when we're interviewing, our CFOs and people like that, I'm not asking them about their beauty journey, but
they can talk about their finance journey.
Exactly.
And
It's all about, storytelling and what led them to their why. And I think anytime, it's funny, I always say, when my daughter was going through the college process, and for those that have, juniors and seniors in high school, I've now sent her off to college, but I remember when she would get so stressed out, I'd say, Lulu, what's so interesting is I've probably interviewed, I don't know, over 70 people over the course of the last 3 years. And the one thing I never asked them is where they went to college, right? I asked them about their whys and their passion. And so I think staying focused on that, then it allows the person that you're
focusing
interviewing.
on the why.
Yeah. Allows the person that you're interviewing to come to you with their dreams and their goals and their alliance. And I think one beautiful thing about having a startup and a small business is that in those early days, it's one of the sweetest moments, because everybody is so aligned in the goal and the passion and the mission and the why. And sometimes that can get a little lost as a company gets bigger.
Yeah.
And so it is a really great time for talent for us right now. And I think we are finally at this point, at almost 4, it will be 4 on December 2nd, that we have now been able to attract some of the best talent that I could have ever imagined working with. And I do not take it for granted, since, as I mentioned, in my first brand, I was the only person that worked there for a few years.
No, I know. And I love that you do focus on the passion point, because especially as a young company, you're not going to be able to offer the same pay. Your hours are going to be longer. It's just more work, frankly, than a more established brand. But you really have to have people that are leaned into the why and the mission, and are equally passionate about it.
And they're willing to wear many hats.
Yeah.
Startup life, small business life isn't for everyone. There are many jobs that I do as the co-founder and founder of Relevant that maybe somebody who's been in a company for 10 years and has scaled and is, really just operating as the founder and the talent do. But I think it's important, and I think it's the best way to learn, and that's something that we encourage everybody that comes to the company, is to be open to wearing several hats, because then and we've had this situation before where we've hired somebody to fulfill a certain role, and as they continue to wear many hats, say, oh, you know what? I would love to interview for this position over here that may be an entirely different position, and now are fully thriving in that space. So I think it's one of the greatest ways to learn and grow.
I love that. And growth internally is huge. I want to talk about your partnerships because between JC Penney and now American Airlines, you're the amenity kit, which is huge.
Yes.
How did these come about, and how have you prioritized partnerships
Yes.
for your company from the onset?
Yes. I think one of the things that we were really clear about, even when we were just starting and trying to figure out who we were, was that we really saw 13 Lune as a brand. We don't call ourselves a retailer, we're a brand. And so when you go into building a platform and a space as a brand, as opposed to sort of limiting yourself into one category, opportunities really flow your way. So I think we've done a really great job at communicating that we are a brand, that we are a company that is committed to moving the needle for change, for inclusion and diversity across a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is beauty, celebrating global beauty. That's when I think you are able to attract partners, maybe even outside of the beauty space, like we have with American Airlines. We met American Airlines through our head of global business development at 13 Lune, John Frierson, who had a relationship with Formia, who helps to broker their amenities and many other things that come on an airplane. I've learned so much about how airplanes are made through this partnership. And we met them years ago, and at the time they were speaking the same language, except from the perspective of the airline industry, and the end user, the consumer, feeling seen. And so often amenity kits are sort of the same amenity kit for years and years and years. And what we presented to them was, how do we align our aligned missions within a partnership where we can constantly curate the amenity kits while introducing the American guest to all of the beautiful, diverse brands of 13 Lune. And they thought it was a great idea. I mean, never in a million years did I think, when I had that first big meeting in the corporate offices at American Airlines in Dallas, that this was going to be our lives, especially so early into our company.
In Texas.
Right? Yeah. I mean, by the way, I was climbing on that's the most fun office, by the way, the American Airlines. I mean, you can climb on the wings and sit in a bench. Yes, it was a play date for me, but it was also so amazing to think, how much, or to be able to witness how much thought goes into the customer experience in flights. And I appreciate it so much more now when I get on the plane. So that's how it came about. And it's so much fun. We just launched our first.
And you pitched to them, or they were like, here are our needs. Could there be?
Yeah, it was very mutual. It was a mutual conversation. They were very committed to their mission of inclusivity in the skies. And we were very committed to giving them the exciting opportunity to curate and to have revolving bags, so that the customer, especially that, global, and it's global, it's not even just domestic, for first class, priority, and priority economy and business class on all global flights for American. And
does it direct any sales back to you, or are you all thinking that it's just awareness?
It's a licensing deal. Yeah, it's a licensing deal. And they help us to produce all the product that you receive on the plane. So going back to 13 Lune being a brand and licensing opportunities, and even what we've created here with JC Penney in the United States, we see a real opportunity to bring not only Relevant, our brand, into distribution globally, but also to bring 13 Lune, whether it be in stores, whether it be in airports, et cetera. But, we represent I think we have more Latina, Latinx, and Hispanic brands than any other beauty platform in the world. And we also are able to represent over 100 different countries, from South America to East Asia, South Asia. So the translation of bringing 13 Lune into the places, the Middle East, GCC, to be able to bring 13 Lune into places like that through licensing opportunities, while also curating local brands on the ground there, are really exciting for us.
It's huge. And in terms of what's next for you all, where you want 13 Lune to go, can you speak a little bit to, over the next 5 years, between 13 Lune, the platform, and Relevant, how are you thinking about growth?
Yes.
How are you thinking about getting there?
Yeah. So sort of to my earlier point, for 13 Lune, we really see the opportunity for the 13 Lune experience as a brand in many places globally, I think is where we will hit that scale, as well as the potential to create a 13 Lune branded brand at a different price point than Relevant. So that's something that we are focused on in this next phase of growth. For Relevant specifically, you know, both 13 Lune and Relevant are no longer exclusive to JC Penney. So we're currently having conversations with domestic retailers and global partners to see where they can end up next. Relevant recently launched into Sephora in the UK. And so we will be launching into another major retailer here in the US in 2025. And, you know, continuing to not only curate brands from around the globe to celebrate inclusive beauty, but really nurturing. You know, we've gone from 13 brands in 2020 to over 180 brands now. And we've seen the ones that have clearly come out and gone from zero to many millions over the course of these 4 years. We've seen opportunities with, you know, our in real life experiences within flagship, and how can we continue to establish those types of relationships to bring more services into our flagship store. So, you know, I think for us, it's been, you know, crazy hockey stick growth in this first 4 years, and this next phase that will take us to the next 3 to 5 years. And hopefully our new future home will be about global growth.
Amazing. So you've gone from 13 to 180 brands.
Mhm.
How do you think about vetting those brands? Like what's the criteria for bringing them in?
Yes.
And then how do you support them on shelf?
Yes. So, you know, in the very early days, we had one person on the merch team, and her name is Janelle Freeman, and she really was the curator of the gallery. She helped build beauty at Net-A-Porter under David Olson. And so we really worked in tandem to sort of go through those lists, those listicles that were going around in 2020. I would DM founders back in the day and say, hi, my name is Neh-Kay-Oh. I was shocked at how many of them, because even though Neh-Kay-Oh was a Unilever brand, it was still so niche. I was surprised how many of these founders that I would reach out to knew me or knew the journey that I had with my first brand, and formed, you know, friendships and heard their stories. And so in the beginning, you know, it was 13 brands, one ally brand. Our first ally brand was Goop. Gwyneth Paltrow was one of our first investors in the platform, and also a great ally of mine for many years as a beauty founder. And so from there, it really became, you know, Janelle at the time building out her merch team. And before, you know, now we get a lot of inbound. Before it was a lot of sort of reaching out to brands to curate this element of discovery. And so it really comes from, you know, what is your why? I believe that people buy into people before they buy into products. So, you know, definitely a rich founder story. Efficacy is table stakes. You know, it's no longer like everything can just have shea butter in it, and it's Black owned. And so that means that the consumer, the end guest now really needs to make sure that the product works. And so there's a lot of testing that goes on within our 13 Lune family. And then really looking at the current assortment. And, you know, while we may have, you know, bigger brands, you know, ally brands like a Goop or an Olaplex or Lola V, and even bigger, you know, BIPOC brands, BIPOC founded brands like Pattern, et cetera, we also really want to continue to make space for the brands that we discover organically, that we feel will fit into the assortment and give the end user, the guest, the most exciting experience of discovery.
Beautiful. And I would say the discovery too is amazing. The way the assortment too, just in terms of problem solving. And I loved the story you told about the product that is maybe you could speak a little bit to this, but you had a compact that became one of the best-selling gift items. Right?
You mean are you talking about the story I told you about CC and the Prados Beauty? Are you talking about?
It was like a mosaic compact, I feel like.
Yeah. Okay, that was CC.
So beautiful. Yeah.
So CC Meadows is the founder of Prados Beauty, which when we brought her to JC Penney under the 13 Lune store was the first time that a Native American Chicana makeup artist / makeup founder ever launched into national retail. And she very quickly became one of our top sellers. She was one of the original 13 brands. And with some of her palettes, she really looks at her Native American and Chicana culture to inspire the color she uses and the textiles that she uses on her packaging. And she even would dream the packaging and then align with a Native American artist to paint. I mean, they're the most beautiful palettes, and it became the number one palette. I make eyeshadow palette, her first collection. And it had gorgeous colors like turquoise and orange and yellow, but not only for me, a full-blown, Gen Xer, but even for my daughter, every time she would have a friend's birthday, and she would say, "Oh, Mom, will you please buy one of the Prados palettes at the store so I can give it to so-and-so?" And I think not only the beauty and the efficacy of these gorgeous palettes, and she has a complete shade range, but just the beauty of the story behind it and the inspiration behind it, and how fun and gorgeous and eye-catching it is, made that palette and everything else she makes such a brand of destination for so many, and both our flagship and she's still with us at 13 Lune at JC Penney.
Love it. Well, there's a couple audience questions that I want to ask with the final minutes that we have. And one is from Sabrina. And she asked, the brands by Black and brown founders carried by 13 Lune been accepted by mainstream audiences? What strategies are you using to reach audiences beyond the Black and brown communities to grow business?
That's a great question. Thank you, Sabrina. It's so interesting. And I think, and I answer this completely respectfully because, I've been a beauty founder since 2001, launched my first brand in 2002. And quite honestly, and I mean this completely respectfully, it wasn't until 2020 that the term Black female founder preceded Nyakio Grieco founder of, right? And I think the best way, well, first of all, you have to tell an authentic story. And sadly, we still have to say things like Black and brown people make products for people other than Black and brown people. Of course, we formulate for our own skin, for our own hair. It has to work on us. And honestly, for any brand, and this is what I did with Relevant, is that I tested all of my skincare and cosmetics on the most melanin-rich skin first, because we often tend to have more issues with eczema, rosacea, hyperpigmentation, hypopigmentation, sensitivity to acids. And so when you test the product on the most melanin-rich skin first, and we all have melanin, every single person has melanin, but then continue to serve all through the experience, then it makes it safe for everyone. We say that with Relevant, everything is melanin safe. So as far as reaching a consumer that's not Black or brown, because carrying 90% of brands that are Black or brown, it's really just in telling the truth, which is, and I use this example a lot. My original brand had been part of the Laura Mercier portfolio of brands at one point, Girl Witch Products. And Laura became a mentor to me back in the day when I was with that portfolio, and would often, when she was creating new shades, et cetera, I would get to go in there and experience, working with her team. And we're not a monolith. I have a red undertone. Some Black people have a yellow undertone. But I wear Laura Mercier products. I use Lola V glossing detangler in my hair. I use Pattern in my hair, right? I am a Black woman, a proud Black woman. And nobody ever asks, I never thought in a million years, unless a shade is not available for me, can I use this because that founder doesn't look like me? Right. And it is the same experience. And, to take it further, most beauty rituals and ingredients that we use across the entire multi-billion global beauty industry come from marginalized parts of the world, like Africa or South Asia. So if you use a product that has marula oil in it, but it was created by a white founder, it's still an African ingredient, right? And most people that cultivate marula in South Africa are people of color, but you can still use it. Right. So I think it really just boils down to removing the stigma that Black and brown people only make products for ourselves for some people. And by telling that authentic story, we naturally attract a very diverse consumer audience for both 13 and relevant.
Amazing. Well, that brings us to time.
Oh.
But I so love just the passion that you have. I think it's inspiring for everybody. And I think that there were some questions around how do you market without a big budget. I think a part of that is getting your story out there, starting your social media channels, telling that story, talking about the heritage, talking about your ingredients, talking about the efficacy of the product, and again, your reason why, right?
Yes.
And I think you're so good at that. And there's so much to be learned by all these beauty founders as it pertains to that. And also just the way that you're able to do that for other brands as well is beautiful.
Thank you so much. And thank you. And I'm glad your freezer's better now.
Well, I think it's just unplugged. I don't know if it's better, but
well, I hope it's nice. Thank you all. And thank you for having
so much, Neh-Kay-Oh. And as a final reminder, we have our 10th house cohort that is opening up. It is a beauty cohort. So beauty founders, personal care is ingestible beauty. If your ultimate goal is beauty, but it's a self-care platform or a way to get it by means other than applying something to your face, that's also beauty. So if you define yourself as beauty, then you belong in this cohort. And we would love to have you. And we'll actually share details as well in the comments on time, place, how you apply, everything. But Neh-Kay-Oh, cannot thank you enough. Your beautiful journey always resonates with us and all the founders that are working so hard to make their dreams a reality. So we appreciate your time, and everyone, thank you for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.